Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I am the Fuzz, and today we're going to talk about buffs. So, our developers have made it clear that they want to split up making nerfs and buffs into separate patches, because as they have learned, when you combine the two together, what ends up happening is that you take care of one overpowered thing, and then the next one immediately pops up. The clearest example we've seen of that was with Advanced Neva during her brief rise to power, when the life total was made 25, which nerfed most aggro, and her hero power was made 1 mana less, which buffed her, so that was enough to push her into that next level. So what we're going to talk about is a set of cards which I think definitely need a little bit of love. Now, I'm strictly talking about cards which right now see like zero play. No play at all. We're not talking about cards that are like almost good enough, like Dread Knight, like Lightning Elemental. We're talking cards that are simply not played. And why they're not played, and a suggestion for how we could make them a little bit better. So that not necessarily they are played and they are good, but just so that they are not horrible. You know, so if you look at a card like this, you might think, maybe I could include it, maybe not. Instead of, this card is trash, I'm never going to include it in anything. Anyways, without further ado, let's kick it off with Heavy Infantry. This card puzzles me because I'm honestly not sure how to make it better without making it obscenely overpowered. If you give it one more speed, it'd be like the best 2-drop in the game, probably. Yeah, pretty much. If you give it one extra attack, it would be too strong as well. What I think Heavy Infantry just needs is a bit of a redesign. Make it have more speed or more attack when defending and when not attacking. Because right now it's basically just an oversized zombie legionnaire. And that's not very interesting, is it? Although this is one of the least bad cards on the list, admittedly. Now let's move on to something worse. War Fanfares. What a fun card. Said no one ever in the history of Spellweaver. So the problem is very simple. Too much mana and it doesn't really do a whole lot. My suggestion is very simple. Make it give might counters instead. But maybe only up to, let's say, 3 creatures. So that it's not ridiculous. That way you have a reason to play it. You can play it even when you don't necessarily have a huge board. And it would fit the theme of Order having the permanent buffs, since Touch of Light is a permanent buff compared to Word of Vigor, which is not permanent anymore. This would be more in line with how Order is doing things. 3+1/+1 counters on up to 3 creatures. 1 on up to 3 creatures should be fine. Maybe just 2 creatures, but basically make it more permanent. Because why would you play this when you can play something like a Master Tactician, which also comes with a big body? Enough said. Griffin Rider. We're going to keep this one simple. This card sucks, not because of its stat line or because of its abilities, but because 4 mana and 1 aspect, simply put, sucks ass. And this also extends to the other 4 mana, 1 aspect cards such as Zombie Giant and the Hunting Gigantodon. That mana cost is just bad, and we're going to get into much deeper detail about that when I do my next video, where I will talk about the stat and mana cost distribution overall. I'll get into the details later, but basically the basic idea here is this cost is really bad. So that's why creatures of that cost simply do not see play. Angelic Might. If you compare this to Overcharger, it seems kind of overpriced. Overcharger is +1/+1 more and unstoppable, and it has a 1 lower requirement. So even though this is permanent, Overcharger can be searched out. So poor Angelic Might. Very simple. Make it 2 mana, or make it give like flying as well. Something like that. Simple enough. Frost Elemental. Oh my goodness. Poor old Frost Elemental. I had such hopes for you. Unfortunately, you are awful. So why is this card awful? Well, number one, 3 mana is a lot for a creature that has a horrible stat line of just 1/3/2 speed. That does not fly. All this guy can really do is kill goblins. That's it. He just kills some goblins. The effect is alright, but you just compare this to a Flash Freeze, which costs 1 mana, and since it actually does 1 damage, you can just use it to remove small creatures, whereas this just sets them up to be removed. But you're paying 2 more mana, and you're getting a very crappy body. So, that's a really bad combination. Joro made an interesting suggestion for this one. Make it actually cast Flash Freeze, so that it would actually do 1 damage, in addition to freezing, so that you could use it to remove, like, small threats. And that's cool. I would be totally on board with that. It would make it at least a consideration. And actually a reasonable addition to a Wisdom deck. Astral Dive. You'd think this card would be a no-brainer addition to any energy-based deck, right? But it's just not. And this is just because it's very expensive to play. 3 mana it's a little bit too much. The energy boost is nice, but it just doesn't justify it when you have things like the hero power that gives you +2 energy every 3 turns, or every 2 turns even. And then you also have Force Wielder, which is much more efficient than this card. So this card was cool when it cost 1 mana. It doesn't fly at 3 mana. I would like to see this at 2 mana and see how it works. If it's OP, which it may be, but not currently, then it could go back to 3. In that case, maybe it should give up to 3 cards, 2 energy. As it is, it just doesn't have a place. Electric Orai. Now, this card has been discussed many times by many people, including myself, in that the only play this card has ever seen is in cheesy OTK decks, where you preceded with the other Orai, the one that gives energy, and then you end up with an Orai with like 6 energy, and then you use the Swift hero power and hit your opponent for like 17 damage or something. Yeah, really, really funny. More realistically, this creature is basically just a 3 mana, 3/1 for 2 mana. If you just picture this as a 3/1 2 speed for 2 mana, which is generous for this card, that's not very good, because a Goblin Warrior is 1 mana. Yeah, it's a 2/1, but whatever. Aristocrat is a 3/1 for 1 mana as well. Just like before, it just trades for 1 small creature. Having 3 attack instead of 2 doesn't really help it much. Costing 2 mana instead of 1 definitely hurts it much. So this card just needs to be redesigned completely. And I believe, if I can remember way back when, I suggested that instead of giving itself +2 attack, it could use the energy to like deal 1 damage to something, so that you could actually use it as like removal or something. And if you could stack some energy on it, it could be a pretty cool card. Yeah, maybe one day. Mantle of Winds, cool card. The fact that it returns to your hand is really neat, but unfortunately 2 mana is simply not worth the effect. +1 speed and flying on a creature is cool, but not for 2 mana. At 1 mana, it might be interesting, and actually possibly a consideration for corruption decks, because I would be laughing out loud if I saw on the other side of the field flying Hydras and flying Giants and flying Dread Knights with 2 speed. Those would be good times. With 1 mana, yeah, could happen, but at 2, it's just too expensive. Wasp Swarm, oh my goodness. This card, now the funny thing about this card is it looks much worse than it is, because what's not immediately obvious is that if you move everything to the support line, you as the player who casts this spell can still pull your creatures from the support row forward back again and attack with them. So what this spell basically reads is all of your opponent's creatures on the front row can't block this turn and can't attack next turn unless they have Swift. So it's actually not terrible. What is terrible is that mana cost. 3 mana for that is not going to fly. Also, I think I would like to see a redesign on this as well, because it's basically kind of like a OTK win more card at best, you know, if it ever actually saw play. It's just that nature decks don't really need help because they already have a lot of 3 speed. They just run you over anyways, with or without this card. Primordial Trant. Cool idea. Unfortunately, doesn't work. With the Primordial Trant, it's quite simple. This card needs to have Unstoppable. Otherwise, why in the world would you put elves under it and make your board smaller? Is it to protect your elves? Maybe, but why not just hit your opponent in the face with them instead? And also, you have to pay a lot of mana to protect your elves. And also, if you're protecting them from Dominion, you're gonna get hit with Helm, and then you will instantly lose the game. So yeah, this card just needs to be unstoppable to actually promote the idea of creating this lumbering juggernaut with the might of all the elves behind it hitting you in the face. As it is, there's literally no reason to use this effect. And if you're not using this effect, it's a 3/3 with 1 speed. Yeah, that's not gonna fly. Vegetation Blockade. This card is almost legendary in how terrible it is. It is possibly the least played card in the history of Spellweaver. Maybe? I honestly don't know. Anyways, the problem is very simple. You pay 2 mana. Then your opponent pays 2 mana. You lost a card. Good job. The redesign on this should be very simple. Give it energy. And, well, first of all, make your opponent's creatures cost only 1 more. But give it energy, like say 3 energy, and then when your opponent plays a creature, you take an energy away from Vegetation Blockade. Also, to prevent shenanigans, make it so that it can't gain energy, so that you can't just lock your opponent out forever with these. And then it might be something interesting, because a control nature deck might play Vegetation Blockade to slow down the enemy from playing their creatures. Like if an aggressive deck suddenly has to pay 2 mana for their 1-drops, they won't be able to play that many of them. And at the very least, it'll cost your opponent a lot more mana than this originally. Or possibly just make it permanent. Just enemy creatures cost 1 more. The only problem might be is that if you start stacking these, that might get stupid. If you stack 3 of these and they have to pay 3 more mana for their creatures, that could be really nasty. But I don't know. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see somebody get completely owned by Vegetation Blockade. And the only way it's going to happen with this version is if you play a Vegetation Blockade on turn 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, other than that, it's basically you're just wasting cards. Detonate. It's a test of time that doesn't destroy spells. So it is worse than a card that doesn't see play. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. So, very simple. This card needs to differentiate itself somehow, because right now it doesn't do anything special. My idea was very simple. Have it also deal 1 damage to something. So destroy an artifact, deal 1 damage to whatever. The idea is twofold. Number 1 is that it is different from just spell and artifact removal. Number 2 is that you can play it without a target, just to deal the 1 damage to maybe remove a small creature. It would become much more versatile. Yeah, 1 damage for 2 mana sucks, but it's something. So if you have no targets for artifacts, it's not dead in hand. It's very similar to Unicorn in that case. Or hell, even Fireworker. Fireworker has the same purpose of destroying artifacts, but it's a creature. So if you don't have artifacts to destroy, it's a body on the board, and Detonate could serve a similar purpose. Now, the only issue might be with Burning Rage, because it would be a 2 mana spell that they can play to fuel their Burning Rage. But that is the problem with Burning Rage, not with Detonate. So, yeah, let's make it happen. Make it deal 1 damage extra and allow it to be played without a target for artifacts. I guess in that case, it would have to say deal 1 damage and then also destroy an artifact. Something like that. That might make it playable. Boiling Blood. This card used to cost 1 mana and then it saw some play. At 2 mana, honestly, you might as well just play 2 goblins. You basically are stacking a Goblin Warrior on top of something, but you're paying double the cost, and it's just not worth it. You're better off just having more creatures, honestly. I don't know what to do with this card. Maybe we could make it cost 1 again, but then maybe aggro would be just too good. Maybe we could go a little bit further and have this card give a creature that fire-breathing effect that the Flameborn Incarnate has, where you pay 1 mana to give it 1 extra attack for the turn. Maybe with a limit of 4. In that case, you could make this card cost a little bit more as well. That'd be cool. You could use it on something like Fia and help Fia become a tool for removal of creatures. Yeah, something like that. As it is, the card is just too simple, and it's overcosted, and it's pretty much bleh. Next up, Ruination. This could possibly be the saddest card in Spellweaver. This may be even less played than Vegetation Blockade. Can you believe that? I certainly can. So, destroy all artifacts. Yeah, that's cool, I guess. But you're paying 4 mana, and you have to have 2 rage requirements. That is a hefty cost when Cataclysm has a similar requirement and it destroys all creatures. It turns out creatures get played a lot more than artifacts. So Ruination sucks. Now, people have suggested making this like a 3-aspect card, costing 5 mana or even 6, but then it destroys everything on the board. Like, we're talking artifacts, spells, and creatures. It's a complete board wipe. It'd be very expensive, but it would actually have a purpose. I'd be totally behind that, and we'd have another board clear that does not belong to Dominion. So we could make that card be that. That'd be pretty cool. It might actually see consideration for play in that case, and I'd like to see that. Power Seeker, basically the problem with this guy is he has 1 health on your opponent's turn, so it's very, very easy to remove. And actually, another problem I have is that if you want to power him up, you have to click every single time for each power-up you want to do. And that's really annoying. So if nothing else, if we could just change that, that would be amazing. But what I would say for this guy is scale him up a little bit, maybe 2 aspects, 2 mana, give him like 3 health, but only have him gain attack. And yeah, once per turn, pay X mana, and he gains X attack, right? So you're not clicking once every single time. Seeing Power Seeker becoming some kind of a finisher, that'd be cool. As it is, it dies to Harpy, it dies to like everything, basically. So it occasionally wins games in Trials when your opponent just happens to have no removal, and then you hit him for like 10 damage, and that's really funny. But who are we kidding? Word of Power. Possibly the worst of the word cards. I don't know, it's kind of in competition with the Wisdom Word. The problem is, giving your opponent mana crystals is really bad. In fact, the only reason this card saw any play was because I played it. And it's not like I played it to any great effect. And it was used in one Asperia Cup, I think. Giving your opponent mana crystals can range from kind of harmless if you can Cataclysm their board, to completely destructive when you're ramping a combo deck and they kill you much faster than they're supposed to. So, yeah. Unlike the other words, you don't really benefit by playing it with mono Dominion, because the more you ramp yourself, the more you ramp your opponent. So I think the simple redesign on this is give your opponent just less mana crystals. Maybe just give them 1 mana crystal, and then you gain mana crystals equal to your Dominion levels. That'd be interesting. I'm not sure if that would be too OP, because that is a lot of ramp. Ramping for 2 or 3 mana while drawing a card is a little bit ridiculous. So this card might just be broken by design, and it might need to be just completely reworked into something a little bit more interesting. Obviously, the manipulation of mana is with the flavor of Dominion, but maybe it should be something else. I don't know what, though. Maybe something with weakness counters. That'd be cool. Bloodborne Prince. This guy's actually kind of cool, but his main problem, number 1, is it's a 1-aspect creature, which means it dies to Harpy, and that's a big problem. And I honestly feel like because of how it works, and it's supposed to be this big finisher where you sacrifice creatures into it, it should not be a 1-aspect card. It should be a 2-aspect card so that it doesn't die to Harpy, and it can serve as this big threat. Right now, there's not really any efficient way to put enough little bodies on the board to make it worth it, because the most efficient thing you can sacrifice is something like a Militia. But even then, you're giving up a 1-1 to add 1-1 to this guy, which is cool because he is lifebound, but it's a lot of effort and not nearly enough reward. So I would say scale him up a little bit, make him 2 aspects, maybe make him 2 Dominion, and make him a little bit more powerful. Maybe give him 2 attack to start, and then maybe he could be dangerous, because it is not that easy to power him up. It should be a little bit better. Power Spike Armor. So this is the worst of the implants, and it's unplayable for a very simple reason. Implants are good because they give you a big buff. Since you are getting a weakness emblem every turn that you have an implant, the initial buff has to be good enough. Overcharger is strong because plus 3/3 right away is insane, But even after you get the first counter, it's still plus 2/2, which is good. It's still a nice buff. With the hook, you're getting plus 2/2 up front, and then only plus 1/1 the next turn, but you get that useful ability to pull creatures from the back. So you see 2 of those in implant decks. This thing only gives you +1/+1. So on the next turn, the buff is gone, and all you are left with is unblockable, which is not terribly useful. I would just recommend, instead of unblockable, give it deadly instead. So even without the buff, it actually does something. It would serve as a useful way to help remove creatures. Now, the only problem with that is that it's in Dominion, and by God, Dominion has enough removal. But whatever. Whatever it takes to get this card to see at least a little bit of play. Right now, it's just terrible. Midnight Cravings. Well, I've almost forgotten this card exists. So, the problem is, this is basically a worse version of Word of Vigor. Number 1, it doesn't draw you a card. Number 2, it doesn't give health. It gives speed, but whatever. And finally, it has to target zombies. So it's very limited in that case. I like the idea of having some synergy with zombies, but if you're going to be that specific, it needs to be better. It's instant, which is nice because Corruption has no instants. So how about this? Make it cost 1 mana. Target only 1 zombie, but give it 1 attack, 1 health, and 1 speed. So it's kind of like in between Ambush Strike and Touch of Light, kind of. Because a zombie can benefit from the speed boost a lot more than any other creature, because they're already pretty big. So if they get extra speed as well, that'd be pretty good. Or better yet, make the speed gain permanent. Just give it some reason to play this card. 2 mana is not enough. I mean, for 2 mana, you've got instant spells like Pacify, which is much better. You've got Guards, which is much better for protecting your board. For 1 mana, you've got Ambush Strike, Touches of Light, you name it. This card doesn't even come close to measuring up, so make it 1 mana, and then it might see some play. Although 1 mana, target 2 zombies might be a little bit too good, but maybe not, honestly. Since if you're thinking about spells for Corruption, they tend to just run Noxious and Consume. They just remove the enemy creatures. And lastly, the Hero Power. The basic Nefaros Hero Power already reduces the enemy speed on their creatures. So this card feels a bit redundant when you can just use your Hero Power to catch up to a faster creature. So poor Midnight Cravings has no chance as it is, and I would like to see it a little bit better. They tried to improve it. It used to be a lot worse, but unfortunately it went from completely worthless to mostly worthless. An improvement, sure, but we got a little bit of ways to go. By the way, the art on this card is absolutely disturbing. Undead Hydra. Whoa. It's a 5 mana creature. That is a special thing because it's the only 5 mana creature in the game, which is a bit weird because this creature sucks. There is no reason why it costs 5 mana. It's got a big body, sure, but it's got 1 speed. And that's pretty damning. So, a lot of people have suggested buffing this card. There have been various suggestions, making it 2 speed, making it cost 3 aspects and 4 mana, or just straight up reducing its cost by 4. Probably any one of those will be fine. I think giving it 2 speed might be kind of not very flavorful. I would like to see this at 4 mana. 4 mana and 2 aspect, I think, is where it belongs, because Corruption does not have a card like that currently, really. Because the Dread Knight is 3 aspects, 4 mana, right? The Necromancer is 3 mana, 2 aspects. There isn't anything really in between. With this, now you'd have something. Because right now this occupies the same mana slot as Succubus and the Dread Knight. That's getting a little bit crowded, and this does not measure up to Succubus and Dread Knight. So, yeah. Make it cost 4 mana, and then I think you might consider playing it. It would actually be quite scary on turn 5. Like it should be. Look at this thing. It looks like it's a boss from Dark Souls or something. And lastly, Zara, the Sloth Rider of Souls, or something like that. Really cool card. Unfortunately, it's not good enough. Much like the Undead Hydra, there have been a few suggestions like upping its stats, giving it more speed. I would recommend very simply to have the -1 attack and 1 health only apply to enemies and give +1/+1 to your creatures. Now, yes, that's a big difference. But hey, this is a 4-aspect creature. It's supposed to be badass. When you see a red dragon played on the other side of the board, you're scared because you know you're going to lose very soon if you don't kill it. That's exactly the kind of reaction this card should cause. And right now, it's just kind of whatever. Yeah, sometimes it kills a creature or two and becomes a 6/6, but whatever. It's still 1 speed. But if it buffs your board and weakens their board, it could have a big impact befitting a 4-aspect epic card. And it would give Corruption that really badass finisher, which they just don't have. Because really, the biggest creature they run is Succubus. And the only reason they run Succubus is because it has an immediate impact on the board. Unlike Zara, who is mostly just annoying because it weakens your board just as much. And this is definitely not a reason to play 4 aspects. And if it was better, if it gave your guys +1/+1, I'd consider playing it in Casual Darius. That would actually be really cool. But no chance. So please make it give your creatures +1/+1. I want to see this card. I want to see this card wreck people. I want to get wrecked by this card. Yeah. Poor Zara. Anyways, that's it for the cards. There may be more. I just wanted to cover the ones specifically that I thought could use a little bit of love. Just so that we have more of a variety. I mean, Spellweavers is already pretty good for trying to keep most of their cards interesting and playable. But we still have a few cards which just don't have a purpose. So I wanted to shine a light on those guys to maybe make them a bit better. Make them competitive, you know? So that you have more options. You have more ways to build your decks. And that's ultimately what we want. But hey, the expansion is going to roll around in 2 months. Month and a half, give or take. Can't wait to see what happens. But until then, we got to make do with what we've got. But I don't believe that we need to have bad cards that serve no purpose. I believe that we should have awesome cards. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.